This video we added a few more items into our room too. We actually imported some of the graphics off a website and we actually created a new enemy here, our little mushroom. And when we play the game, basically all of these now little things are animated, so they look pretty nice when they walk. So we need now to get this enemy to move. Now what we're going to do with this enemy is we're going to make it follow a path. And paths are quite easy within this software to make, and a path will basically allow it just to follow a specific route around the game. So what we're going to do is we're going to click on this here path layer, and you can see now it says path 1. So I'm going to right click and rename that, and I'm going to call this enemy path. And what I'm going to do once I've renamed this enemy path, I'm going to click on select path, and then you can see I haven't got any paths here. The only thing I've got is this thing here which says create new. Now if I click on this, we are going to have to move it later, right? So it's literally put something out called path 1 here. Sometimes that goes right at the bottom. Now if I just collapse all of these for a second, what you'll notice is you have got a paths folder. So if I click, hold down with the mouse, drag, and just leave it go, this now is just going to be called path 1. We can rename this. So I've renamed it enemy path L2. So I know it's going to be my path. Now, how do we draw a path? Right, this is the key, and you've got to be very careful with this. So if I click in front of my enemy here, you can see it's put a little dot here. Now, if you need to delete that dot, you can right click on it and then go to delete point, and then it gets rid of it. Likewise, you can start again by clicking, and then if I click again over here as an example, you can see it's drawn a line. Now, what you can do is you can click around, and this works really well if you do have a maze. So we can click around the room and we can go into various different things. So we can obviously make a little path for our enemy to follow. Now we haven't actually set any collisions up with the walls, so it's not going to interact with the walls. So what you'll find is if you go a bit too close to the wall, it will actually go through. Now, once you are done with your path, it's very important you click off the layer. If you don't, and you randomly click somewhere else, you can see it keeps on adding a path for you. Now, if you've done something like that and you made a mistake, just right click on the last one and then go to delete points, and it gets rid of it for you. And likewise, if you want to make any amendments, you can, or let's say, for example, if you want to change any of them, just click on one of the nodes and then drag it out, and you can move it in whatever shape you want. Now, the path won't actually display or do anything unless we tell the object to follow the path. And to do that, it's really easy. So we're going to double click on our O enemy L2, and we're going to add a create event. And what we're going to do is we are going to say, basically, when you see the path, follow it. Now, to look for this, you'll notice there's a lot of different things here. One of them is called path. Now, I can never remember where this is. It is under a thing called paths, and if you just search for the word path, you can see it comes up with a number of different options. So I'm going to click on this one here, which is start following path, and we basically tell it which path to follow. Now, if you click on this drop down here, and then click on the paths folder, you can see we've got one here, which is called enemy path L2. You can set the speed of the path, so this is the speed that the item will go across it. So as you can see, it's got 1 there. If we say 2, and then you can tell it what to do when it gets to the end of the path. Now by default, it stops. But what you can do is you can tell it to stop, restart, loop, or reverse. So if I say to reverse, what we can then do is play this, and we'll see then the enemy will start to move on its own, and it'll follow a path. So as I said earlier, we haven't actually put any collisions in place with this enemy. So it is going to be able to go through the walls. So what you might need to do is adjust the path slightly. So as you've seen with mine now, when it starts, it's obviously going over here and going into the wall a little bit. So what we can do is we can go back to the room, and then we can move things over. Now the other thing you can do as well is you can move, my mistake, if I go back to the enemy layer, you can move the enemy to start in a slightly different location, because what it does is it moves relative to where the path is. So you've seen now I've moved that down a little bit and over. So let's see what that does now to the actual design. So you can see just by moving this now, it's actually following the path much better. And over here, it hasn't crashed into any of the walls at all, which is good. Okay, now then, it's important to remember really one path to one enemy, unless you've got a really basic path. So let me explain what I mean by that. Very quickly, what I'm going to do is import another image. So I'm going to import another sprite, another enemy, and we're going to make a new path for the enemy to follow. Now for this one, we are going to import let's have a look. We're going to import a radish. Sounds weird, but let me explain. So if I go to enemy, let's go to create, and let's go to S enemy L2, and then I'm going to say 2 at the end of it, or -2. Ooh, can't put a dash, never mind. So let's say S enemy what we're going to do is just import this. Oh, in fact, I've made a mistake there. Look, that's an object. Sorry, my mistake. I'm not concentrating. Right click, create. Let's go to sprite, S enemy L2 radish. Here we go. Let's import. Instead of the mushroom, we're going to go for the radish. And we're going to import the run. Click on yes. We're going to then edit the image. And this time we're going to go to image and we're going to convert it to frames. Now you'll notice with this one, look, it's a slightly different dimension, which is probably good for me to use this. And there's less frames on here as well. So I'm just going to reduce the number of frames that we're going to look at. But we also have to increase the height and the width of the frames as well, purely on the fact that these lines that are coming down here aren't covering the items. So it's probably going to be even less than 11. So let's start by just looking at our width and height. So the width of this, instead of being 32, is it 32, 33? Does that do it? No, probably 32 is actually okay with this one. In fact, we can probably go a little bit less than that. 31, 30, there you are, that's okay. But we need to increase the height. And that's fine, and we need to get one more frame in here to make a 12th, and that looks okay. Let's click on convert, click on yes, and there you are. We now have a radish in here. Now we need to slow this down because there's not that many frames, so let's close that. Let's change that from 30 down to 20. Excellent, great. And let's just resize it. So I'm going to click on the resize sprite, change it from height 39 to 64. So that's 64 by 49, that's fine. So it's a little bit bigger, and we're going to make sure it's the middle center as well. So let's close that. Okay, we now need to make the object, so right click on the objects, look. So I'm going to call this one O enemy L2 radish, and then we're going to bind the radish to the sprite. Sorry, the radish to the object. Here we go. Right, okay, so this one we're going to do something a little bit different. So I'm going to add in a new path layer, and this one is going to be called enemy path radish. Now, to make sure you can distinguish, I'm going to change the color of this one. So we're going to make it green so it stands out a little bit more. Select path, new path, and you can see now it's just randomly put this path in path 2. So drag this up to the paths, right click, rename. Let's call this enemy path L2 radish. Okay, what I'm going to do with this one is going to be really simple, right? I'm going to click on this here, and then I'm going to click on this here. In fact, I'm going to just bring that down a little bit there. Now, you'll probably see there's only one thing here, right? And that's fine. And what we're going to do is we're going to tell the radish to add event, a create event. And then we're going to basically use this path again. And we're going to tell it now, use the second path that we've just made. So that one there, L2. And we're going to give it, we're just going to put it as 1. And then we're going to tell it to reverse as it goes. Okay. Right, what we're going to do now is add the radish in. So I'm going to click my enemy layer and we're going to click on this radish, enemy L2 radish, and we're going to dump the radish in here. So if I just play this, you should see now the radish just go up and down. So there you are, look, the radish is going up and down, which is nice. Well, it's going up. And it's gone back down. Now what we can do is we can put another radish in, and look what happens when we put another radish in. So I'm going to put another radish down here. In fact, I'm going to put it up a little, no, we'll put it down a little bit more. So we'll put it there. So they're at slightly different levels, but watch what's going to happen. So it still follows a path. And the reason it follows a path is because the path is still there. And this is following whatever it thinks it needs to follow. Now, it'll always be at that sort of level, so it'll be sort of almost in line or in sync with this one, but this does help us. So if we were to make a path which went up and around, and you had that on both sides, you could basically make one path and then both enemies could follow it. So if I add in another radish over here as an example, that's a mistake. I shouldn't have dragged that one out. Sorry, my fault. So if I drag another radish in here as an example, and let's play that, what you should see now is this radish will also go up. So you can see the radish over here goes up and the radish over here also goes up as well. And then they hit the top and go down. Why? Because that is where the path is telling it to go. So paths can be complex, but paths can also be very simple, and they can be a really effective tool as well. If you just want like an enemy to patrol, say outside an opening or outside a door, this is a really effective way to get your enemy to basically just follow something really simply, and you can use this in multiple locations around your room.